Hey, in this video we're going to talk about line weight. And line weight has to do with the thickness or the thinness of your line as you apply pressure to your stylus. So this is an example where I press down and I can get this thin to thick variance. First thing you want to check to make sure that your pressure sensitive settings are in fact working is you want to make sure that you have your pressure sensitivity turned on, or that you're using a brush that has pressure sensitivity turned on. I've already talked about making a good ink brush and making a good pencil brush, so if you haven't already watched those videos, take a look at those. But we're going to talk about how you can use line weight to make objects appear closer to the viewer and keep objects further away. So we'll just start off with just drawing a ground plane like so, just to go ahead and establish a place where we can go ahead and draw on. And I'm going to drop the opacity of that layer. This is just going to be labeled as my ground plane. I just use that for reference. And if I'm drawing objects in that ground plane, let's just say that I'm drawing a series of rocks that go towards the background. I'm holding my stylus a little bit, I'm pressing down a little bit more on my stylus, I should say. And as I kind of work my way backward, I'm making the lines thinner and thinner. And line weight is something that I see a lot of intermediate and novice artists struggle with. And it's because of the fact that they're maybe using just a default brush, or they're not customizing their settings. Again, I've made a couple of videos on this topic, so if you haven't already done so, try to watch those. But notice as I'm getting further and further away, the objects have less and less detail. So if I'm creating like a shoreline here of rocks, those rocks kind of trail away, right? Same thing can be done for other objects like fences. There's a fence post, and I'll make a series of fence posts that go forever and forever, right? So now I can use my line weight, and the lines get thinner and thinner as I go away from the viewer. And that's a pretty powerful technique to utilize. So in addition to that, you can also convey texture. So the closer you are to an object, the more likely you're going to see some semblance of texture, like you might see some wood grain on objects that are really nearby. And as you get further and further away, you see less and less detail. And for this, I just use some striated lines. I add some little dots, just stuff to kind of provide a sense of what this material is made of. Let's say that you want to go ahead and draw a series of buildings. I'll just put this on a different layer so I have a little more customization. And I'm going to let's create a small grid so you can see how I'm working here. This grid will be towards the top. Again, considering a very simple scenario here, I'll just call this top grid. I'll drop the opacity of that, and I'll use that as the basis for setting up some buildings. I'm not going to be super perfect about these buildings, but let's just say that we have buildings that are moving off into the distance. Maybe there's a little bit of a space. Keeping in mind vanishing points and all that good stuff. But so you can see as we get further and further away, there's a hint of other objects that are off in the distance. So line weight plays a huge role in that. So when we're actually really close to the object, we might go ahead and draw more information, right? This thing has some windows. We've talked about some perspective techniques and stuff in previous videos, so you can watch those if you haven't already. And so now I've got something that looks like it's trailing off into the distance. Like so. So the thing I want you to practice is play with line weight variation. Create a brush or use a brush or download a brush and just experiment with pen pressure. Now, I'm running this on a Wacom tablet, so I'll show you my system preferences. Under Wacom tablet, here you have the ability of customizing the tip feel. For me, I choose to have a more firm tip feel, and this is one area where I think a lot of intermediate artists really don't pay particular attention to tip feel. But if your tablet isn't working the way you want it to work, if you're pressing down really hard to get a line, or you press barely and you're getting a big thick line, you need to go back in and adjust your tip feel. You can also play with the customization options. This is a curve that shows pressure of your pen versus how much ink, quote unquote, is coming out, and you can play with this curve and you can test it out to see if it suits your fancy, and you can always alter it, you can manipulate it, you can move it around and do whatever you need to. So that's something I would ask you to go ahead and check out too. I don't really play with the tilt sensitivity, I just leave that as default. But you want to make sure that you're having lines that have good variation, and then when you do that, the world kind of opens up, because then you can convey stuff that's thin and thick. Now, just line variation alone isn't enough. Sometimes you have to actually make your brush small. So I'm using my bracket key, my left bracket key, to make the brush really tiny, and that allows me to go in and really like add some extra bits of detail. And I'm also zoomed in on the object too. And so as I pull back, you can see some hint of those objects. Sometimes I'll also use hatching. I'll just use some straight lines. And this can be used to indicate areas that are a little bit more shaded. It creates some separation between the different planes, like the front plane and the back plane. And you can always come back in, you can always add some black fills too. That's always good. You know, your drawing should read pretty well in, you know, just black and white, or red and white, or whatever you're using. I like to draw in red. I think I mentioned that millions of times before in videos. So here's some bricks. You know, and I don't know, maybe this is a structure that has some kind of a hallway and some kind of a sign. You know, when I'm drawing these signs, I should also mention too that I'm trying to avoid parallel lines. I'm kind of faking perspective here by making sure that these two lines somehow move towards a vanishing point, and I don't think it's exactly right. But you want to make it believable. So you want to avoid those parallel lines. There's a sign right here. Maybe there's a window. Maybe this area is a little bit dark. Right. And then you can blow up your brush and you can do all sorts of fun stuff. So line weight is the name of the game, and you know, give that a try. If it's not, you know, if you're having some struggles with your brushes and your line work, you know, to get that line confidence, you really want to play with adjusting your brush settings, and think about like also incorporating texture to objects that are really close by. And don't forget to draw with the grid. It's such a powerful tool. The grid does not always have to be straight and flat. You can have grids on different planes. Maybe I'll talk about that in another video. But this is just pretty much on line weight. So let me know if you have any questions about any of this stuff. You know, you can always drop me a comment in the comments below. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate the subs. And I look forward to sharing more information with you. Talk to you soon.